of the country, we join hands to also do the same. Tomorrow we are having a Tarehe Sita celebration. As students of the country still, we call upon the government that the struggle why His Excellency, the beloved President and the colleagues went to the bush was to fight for a number of reasons, and one of them was that torturing of detainees. We see this is still happening. We call upon the government to take serious note on this and bring those who are torturing the detainees into books, because it's not so good, because someone is already in custody. And briefly, that is it.
Yes, get into the topic. What should be the role, of course, like of UNSA, you student leaders, in promotion of African languages? Because at times you find that when you're having African languages in schools, they say that is a vernacular. At times you find they put some kind of, they put some posters saying this is a vernacular-free zone, where you're not supposed. So what should be your role in the promotion of the African indigenous languages in our schools, in the education system?
What we need to do know first, as students, leaders of the country, we should appreciate who we are. And it should be upon every African to know, to identify him or herself and trace the origins. We should also benchmark from the successful communities that stick to their culture, stick to their beliefs, and finally, some of them happen to be the superpowers of the country today, of the world today. You look at China, one of the factors why China is so powerful is because of its culture and their language. So as students, leaders of the country, we cannot deviate from this. We also want one day our African continent to be somewhere very far. And this should come with a number of factors, not forgetting our language, because it defines who we are. It tells how we can as well work together and develop the continent. What we can do as students, leaders of the country in promotion of African languages in school is, one, to do more research about this. Can it work? Can we use it as a tool to develop ourselves and the country at large? After doing a thorough research, we do the comparison, we do the benchmarking. The next thing should be to go on ground and do the sensitization to the students, the sensitization to the concerned authorities, and write proposals to concerned authorities, the Ministry of Education, the government, citing out the advantages of why our languages should really be taken on and embraced in institutions of learning.
Well, thank you very much, Yusuf. And yes, this juncture we go to our colleague on Zoom, that is Dr. Lang Famfa Damfa. I don't know, Doctor, are you online?
From Bamako, here.
Yes, how is Bamako, how is Mali, and what is the situation in Mali?
We are fine. We are fine. Thank you very much. We are fine. And I greet all my fellow panelists, and I greet you all. Thank you very much for having us on the platform.
Yes, Doctor, the last week of January was the African Languages Week. Perhaps can you take us through the origin of the African Languages Week and how you are, as the custodian of the African languages at African Union, what you're putting in place, what measures you're putting in place so that our African languages can be embraced by the various education systems we have on the continent?
Thank you very much for, I think that is a very, very important question. Now, first of all, the African Academy of Languages is a specialized institution of the African Union. And our mandate is to develop and promote African languages by, firstly, encouraging the formulation and establishment of vigorous and articulated language policies in the member states of the African Union, and the sharing of experience in policy making so that African languages can be used in a wider range of domains, in education as languages of instruction, as official languages, in the media, etc. Now, as an AU specialized institution, our main mandate is, as the gentleman has said, to work on this African language issue, because we can't develop ourselves sustainably, effectively without our languages.
Yes, well, thank you.
Now, when it comes to the African Languages Week, I think the African Languages Week, proposing it to the African peoples is one of our mandates. So the Secretariat of the African Academy of Languages assumed that the African peoples should have a time to sit down, to reflect on their languages, learn, and then try to see how these languages, the status of these languages can be improved so that we can effectively use them as factors of development, integration, and the cooperation in Africa. So we propose to the ministers of culture, the Specialized Technical Committee, Youth, Culture and Sport, which is a committee that looks into cultural affairs and sports and the youth, and then they endorsed this proposal, and then became a policy for the African Union. So from in January 24 to 30 each year, all Africa will to celebrate African languages, to look into ways and means of empowering these languages, to try to see how we can improve the status of African languages.
Yeah, well, Doctor, we would want to know what strategies as ACLAN you're putting in place to popularize this African Languages Week, because now this is the third year running and we don't see much awareness in schools. Yet some education institutions, universities, actually teaching those some of the African languages. For example, in West Africa, you'll find that most universities are teaching Fulani, are teaching Hausa. In North Africa, most universities are teaching and schools are teaching Arabic. In East Africa, they are teaching Swahili. In Southern Africa, especially in South Africa, you'll find that Zulu and Xhosa are being taught in the various provinces. So how much awareness are you putting out there so that schools can and education institutions can embrace this week?
Thank you for that question. It's really relevant. African Languages Week is just a small aspect of our activities to empower African languages. It is mainly meant to increase awareness and appreciation of African languages and to manifest the indispensable role of African languages in Africa's integration and development. What ACLAN is doing to promote and empower African languages so that we can effectively use them in the education system. We have core projects. For example, if you want to use a language as a language of instruction, you have to have terminology for this language. You have to do lexicography. Now, we have a project we call Terminology and Lexicography, and this project, the objective is to develop terminology and for African languages. So this is one of them. But basically, what we do, we establish language commissions. We have about 25 language commissions established in Africa now. These 25 language commissions, we call them vehicular cross-border language commissions. Let me give an example of Kiswahili. In all the countries in which Kiswahili is spoken, we select specialists in Kiswahili to form African Union Vehicular Cross-Border Language Commission for Kiswahili. And their main role at grassroots is to empower, to develop terminology, to develop grammar and all these aspects to develop African languages. The languages they're concerned, Kiswahili, and the many languages, vehicular cross-border languages are like that. So this is what we do basically. And in each member state of the African Union, according to our statutes, we have a national language structure. This national language structure is within the ministry that is in charge of language matters in the member state. Basically, it is culture, but in some countries, education is in charge of languages. So we work with these ministries and they give us a department, a structure, an institution that is dealing with language matters in this country, and to be our entry point, to be our national coordinating agent in this country. And this is the agent that works with the members of the Vehicular Cross-Border Language Commissions to work with Akalan Secretariat and the Assembly of Academicians and other organs of Akalan to try to empower this language. We do terminology, corpus development, and the many, we have projects. I can relate these projects to you as we go on.
Well, thank you, Dr. Damfa. And in studio, we've also been joined by Kambula Milton, the president of Global Peace Foundation. You're welcome, Milton.
Oh, thank you, and I thank our leader from African Union, but also our youthful leaders, but our educators are there and our networks globally. Thank you for really attending this seminar, and we thank management of UBC. Really, I think this is the way to go in shaping the African language to become the backbone of our liberation, but also our transformation, because children who study chemistry in their own local language are actually having more chances to actually use chemistry to create jobs for themselves.
Well, if I can chip in, just a few days, the First Lady and Minister of Education did say, look here, it is time Ugandan students to learn chemistry, biology, and physics in their language. And people made that a laughing subject, say, how can this be? So, and now you're also bringing out the same thing, which actually also Dr. Damfa in Auckland, they're also emphasizing that it is time that these terminologies in chemistry, they should be brought into our own, actually in Tanzania. They study chemistry in Kiswahili, they study geography in Kiswahili, mathematics in Kiswahili. So we can borrow a leaf from them and also do the same here.
Yes, and actually UNESCO's report 2016 indicated that, of course, 60% of our children globally actually study in foreign language, in actual languages they don't understand. And according to that report, you dive into the understanding why education is still challenged with very bad and negative outcomes. You find the entire Africa, you can imagine, the constituents of Africa, children studying in language they don't understand, explains why educational sector performance is not actually impacting the countries. And even the integration has failed. How do you produce these chunks of millions of children and you say they are graduating, but they are not understanding even what they studied in the classroom. So this is the time where we also accept the defeat, of course, from the First Lady and the Minister of Education, that really forgive us, madam. But as a system, we must make sure we work towards reforming the entire education. And I'm happy to report to you, sir, that Nigeria is taking the first step of localizing their curriculum. And they are saying education should be using local languages. There are 3 major blocks in Nigeria. And those major blocks, I mean now in Uganda's context, like Uganda.
Yes, we can have Uganda.
In the West.
We can have Luo.
Exactly. Exactly. For a start. Look, even our constitutions are all in foreign languages. And could we explain why crime is very high? Because people don't know what they should do, what they should not do, what they should do, and even the instruction in the classroom using English is completely really haphazardly. So let us actually, by this recommendation from African Union that at primary level, for example, why would a child study in 20 languages introduced in the classroom? Why we are actually confusing the children? According to the research, young children want a language they understand so that they perform better. They can actually understand the instruction, the do's, the implementation of those studies in practical ways. So as Global Peace Foundation, we feel that actually to deepen even peace, okay, forget about these other economics, but also peace. You are saying unity in diversity is power. But the language itself has divided people. And so when you bring in the education that they are not familiar with in a language they can't understand, then confusion. They start fighting. They don't know that they belong together. They share the same common economic journey. They share the common borders like Africa is together. So they start looking at each other as Kenyan, Tanzanian. Because it is the education that divided them, the French people, the English. So Africa is a baggage, is a location of garbage. What has failed to work, they bring here.
Milton, if you can hold it there. Yes, Yusuf, as student leaders, because student leaders, you actually play a very pivotal role in the promotion of anything. Every other time you see student leaders, you are at loggerheads. You're fighting, running battles with school or colleges or university administration. So this time around, what should be your role in promotion of your own African languages in your schools?
As I earlier on noted, the first thing to put into consideration is us to appreciate the importance of having our very languages being taught in schools. Research has proved that if a student is taught in the mother tongue, the language the person is born of, fully understands even the complicated concepts compared when he or she has been taught in the foreign language. And partly, as he said, it's one of the things why we are having unemployment at a high rate in African countries, and shouldn't be taken for granted. You shouldn't take this for granted. We should now, it's the time to change everything. Our role as students leaders, one is to do the advocacy to the people, to do the sensitization, because still, as African young people, there is that inferiority complex in ourselves when it comes to our own things. Ours are always bad, foreign things are always good. So we've been made to think in that line. Now it's the time to work on the mindset change. What we have to tell our young people, this is the time to go African way. We've gone the other way, but if we to assess the positivity and the negativity of embracing the foreign way, the negativity happens to be outcoming the negativity. But if we to go the African way, you will find that time to come, the negativity will tend to go away and the positivity this time around will be embraced. That is one. Two, to do the benchmarking. As I told you, look at China. Look at the so-called superpowers. They are superpowers because they have embraced a one language, and that one has made them always to target one goal. They work together as a team because they have that factor that can enable them appreciate the concept and they achieve their goals. But for us in Africa, if you brought in an agenda, for example, Agenda 2040, it is in a foreign language. A Mutoro may not appreciate what is Agenda 40. A Mugisu may not appreciate. But if the Agenda 40 was in a mother tongue in African languages, a Mutoro would fully appreciate what is Agenda 40, a Muchiga what is Agenda 40, or an Iteso. And that will bring us together. We work as a team because we have appreciated this Agenda 40, even the complex things in the Agenda 40 per se. And we will work as a team. You will see Africa developing and going forward. And tomorrow, if we do this, I'm so happy that now African heads or African leaders have appreciated that it's the time Africa to identify its own, that to do the things as they should be. This is very good. Now, as young people, let us not rubbish this. Let us not dwell with this. We should only embrace and thank Whoever has thought of Africans starting doing things, following their culture and so on and so forth. For example, Mr. Moderator too, look at our culture. Our culture have been totally destroyed. We have copied and everything, which I believe shouldn't be the case.
Yeah,
because
language is part of culture.
It is part of culture. You know, the other time when the late Lokodo tried to emphasize his culture and so on and so forth, I saw Ugandans laughing at him, which wasn't the case, because we think our things are not good. Our things are bad. I don't want to speak vernacular. As you say, I remember when I was in primary, they could even cane us if I could speak vernacular. They put a bone in you, and in the following day, Uganda cane you. Why? You spoke your mother tongue at school. They want us to speak the foreign language, act like we are Bazungu, forget ours. As we forget our things, we are forgetting the wealth we have. If you have not appreciated where you are coming from, you cannot know where you are going. As Africans, the high time to appreciate where are we coming from, why our judges were very strong, why Ethiopia wasn't ruled, because language was one of the factors. They could easily communicate and fight and become very strong. I'm getting the point. Exactly. Now come to Uganda, come to other parts of the country in Africa, where we had different languages. So as Africa, as Uganda per se, it's the time as a region, because I believe we have five regions in the continent. Which language is highly spoken in the particular region? In
that particular region.
If it is East Africa, yes, the language we've all proved it is Swahili. Can we make Swahili comparison in every country in East Africa? I thank Mama when I saw the proposal the Ministry of Education is bringing on board. They have, in this new curriculum, Swahili has been made comparatively. Let it begin all the way from, not even senior one, I would suggest. It should begin from nursery. Because you see, you get a child of top class, speaks good English, is very eloquent, you even wonder. An African child speaking nice English. What of our languages? So I would suggest, let Swahili be brought to the nursery schools. And even other languages. I heard you asking the question, why is it that still Africans have failed to appreciate these languages? Because these languages have been limited to maybe secondary schools and universities. I had not studied from nursery English. I go to primary, I study English, secondary English, and you expect me to join university and I do Lusoga, or I do Uganda. Really, I cannot, because I didn't know all these things. So they should begin from the grassroots.
Well, thank you very much, Walunga Yusuf. Now, back to the guest from Bamako, that is Mali. Now, institutions like Uganda Broadcasting Corporation actually that are promoting almost all the Ugandan languages. How is ACLAN going to work with media houses or broadcasting houses, national broadcasters like UBC, in the promotion of indigenous African languages? Then secondly, how is ACLAN also working with institutions that are in charge of curriculum development on the African continent so that they can embrace the idea of promoting African languages?
For this very important question, and I'm really happy that we are all talking about the same thing. We have the same objective here, which is all about linguistic democracy and justice. As simple as that. As the gentleman who was just finished have been saying, you can't have African children who are brought up speaking their languages in their families, and then you take them just one day, and then you take them to school to start teaching them in English. I mean, I am also a victim of that. I'm an example of that. My own cousin brother was teaching us mathematics in English. We speak the same language. Numerator, denominator, I didn't understand what the man was talking about. But if that man explained that in my language, then we'll go. Now, what I wanted to say about media houses is that media houses are ACLAN's major partners, because we need to disseminate information. We need to relate information to the peoples of Africa. We need to let African peoples know that our languages are indispensable to our development, to our well-being, to peace and security in our countries, in our communities. This is why in each Vehicular Cross-Border Language Commission, we try to have at least a media personnel, somebody who is a media expert and then is an expert in the language also. We have the Uganda Commission, for example, in Uganda, and Margaret Nankinga. This is Margaret Nankinga is the coordinator of the Uganda Commission, which is doing very well, doing terminology, and we have harmonized the writing system of Luganda. And we are coming to establish language commissions for other languages so that we can effectively use these languages in languages of instruction and as official language. You know, I wanted to recall the Language Plan of Action for Africa, the very first formal institution that the African Union, formerly the Organization of African Unity, established on the African continent is the Inter-African Bureau of Languages, based in Kampala, Uganda. And this Inter-African Bureau of Languages was established to develop language policy for Africa and African Union or OAU member states. So the first step is language policy. If we have language policy that defines the status of our languages, that relates the nature, the manner, the way we are using these languages, and the four main reasons that justified the formulation of this language policy is to guarantee the cultural independence and development of African states, to promote African unity and development, and by using our own languages to contribute to strengthening indigenous efforts, because when you use a people's language or languages, you involve them in their own development. And we're saying to people that the population, the African population, we have only 60%. 40% that speaks English and French and Portuguese and Spanish. The 60% that use African languages essentially, what are we going to do with that? We need to involve them. If you leave the 60% behind, then you are destroying development in the country. And to maintain links with, other parts of the world. You speak other languages. Language is an asset. We are not against English or French or Portuguese or Spanish. We are for linguistic justice, as I have said. Now, this language policy is paramount to us. Why? Because without language policy, we cannot do much. Under this language policy, member states and this language plan of action that the African Bureau of Languages developed in 1985, and this language plan of action was transformed, was renewed, was reproduced in 2006, and it says that each member state should use African languages as languages of instruction, not as subjects, but as languages of instruction. That means we should teach physics and chemistry and economics in African languages. And each member state should develop a language policy that would define and position the status of African languages in national development. So these are there. This language plan of action is there, and all the aspects of language development of the African Union through the African Academy of Languages are in this language plan of action for Africa. And you've been talking about using a language for Africa. We take an example of China. China has more than 200 languages, but they're using what everybody calls Chinese, which is not Chinese. There is no language called Chinese. It is Mandarin, which is one of the numerous languages of China, which is used as an official language of China. And you have regional languages in other places, other regions. Now, the African Academy of Languages has developed the Dar es Salaam Framework for Action, which tells the African leaders, African Union member states, that Article 29 of the Constitutive Act of the African Union, previously 25 of the Charter of the OU, says that the working languages of the institution, the organization, and all institutions will be, if possible, African languages and English, French, Portuguese, and Arabic. And we want the African Union to implement this Article 29, and it is progressive. We developed the Dar es Salaam Framework for Action for Kiswahili to become a language of wider communication in Africa. And just 2 or 3 days ago, the Executive Council of the African Union endorsed Kiswahili as a working language and language of wider communication for the whole of Africa, alongside Arabic, which is spoken in the north. So we are progressing. We will have a language of wider communication, if you want to call it a lingua franca, and then Kiswahili will be promoted all over Africa to be used as a language of instruction, as official language, a language of the media, instead of using English and French and the Portuguese. When African leaders meet, when African people meet, we fight against English and Francophone, Lusophone, Anglophone. Now we're getting out of that. We are getting to our Afrophone sector, which is Kiswahili, and we'll have regional languages in other regional economic communities.
Well, Doctor, thank you for that wonderful submission. Of course, you've talked about the Dar es Salaam Action Plan. I remember I was part of that Dar es Salaam Action Plan, where I really did present a paper on the role of national broadcasters in the promotion of African languages. Now, getting back to studio, I want to look at Milton. Yes, civil society, international organizations, especially those that are looking at peace. How do we use our African languages in the promotion of peace?
As you're aware, it is the language that binds people together. When you're talking about a language, that's why we dive into what unites people. It's their food, it's their music, it's their language. It's what brings them together beyond even the other world that we are talking about. So when you want to kill a nation or a people, deny them the opportunity to speak their own mother tongue. And so if you want to kill them in the world of economics, the same, so that they trade in a language they don't understand. Sometime back, you are aware, one of our ministers signed a document representing this country in terms of billions of shillings, but because this MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding,
was in a different language,
in a confusing language,
yes.
Then therefore we are losing billions of dollars in contracts we can understand. And so even our parliaments, so because every person, look, our constitution says if you have senior 6, I'm talking about S6, just S6.
Form 6.
Form 6.
Yes.
What do you know about community? With your English, basically, English is a benchmark, it's the assessment to promote someone to another class. And so you form what we call a parliament that discusses in a foreign language, to take people as if we are all going to live in a foreign land, being prepared to board a plane to go survive in England. No. We have understood that colonialism came here to actually take away what belongs to us, including our identity. And as a Global Peace Foundation, we want to remind people that you have a stake, you have potential to become somebody. So we want you people who are listening to us today, especially the teachers, the ministries of education on the continent, because this broadcasting is going across the world. You have a chance now, an opportunity that the African Union has signed this mandate so that our children can be given the future. And that future is not in English, because English, we can actually get translators. When you are in the Middle East, translation is another big sector. But people must be allowed to speak their local language. If therefore I'm dealing with someone who does not understand my Lukonjo, must be able to come with a translator. So as Global Peace Foundation, we want to bridge peace, but also remind people that we, regardless of our tribes, regardless of our political parties or nationalities, tribes, all these things, we are one family. We are one family, not because we are speaking one language, but we are one family because we are humans, but also under God the Creator. It is God who's telling us to unite.
Thank you very much. President Yoweri Museveni has time and again said that the ones we call languages are actually not languages, they're supposed to be dialects. He says
exactly.
That Uganda could be having about not more than 10 tribes.
We are connected to one
because
another.
now there's the difference between Runyankore, Ruchiga, Runyoro, Rutoro, Kihaya in Tanzania is actually maybe maybe how words are spoken, how they are pronounced. Yes, let's get to Yusuf. As a young person, of course, we see students after 2 years of lockdown, schools were not operating. Chances are that the students who have reported back to school have even forgotten English, and therefore it means that they can effectively learn in their mother languages. Then secondly, you should also tell us, how is UNSA helping government to mobilize students to get back to school and mobilize teachers also to get back to school?
UNSA, there's a campaign we are running called Go Back to School campaign. And this campaign, we are doing advocacy, talking to the students we come across, those who have not gone back to school, to embrace going back to school. And also raising alarm to the government. Some government-funded schools that have hiked school fees and they're affecting some of the students. And Ministry of Education has always taken these things into consideration. They are giving out directives as regards to this effect. But on the issue of having African languages in schools, Mr. Moderator on behalf of UNSA and the students of the country, I would wish to suggest we better know why are we still being forced to embrace English?
Because it's the official language.
It's the official language.
It's the formal language
why?
in Uganda, yes.
If we answer the question why, and you come up with the answers to that question why, I'm telling you African languages will have to be embraced. One, as Thomas Sankara said, that the hand that feeds you will control you, will direct you to do whatever it wants. That means who should fund our African languages? Should be us. Let's fund the things our own. Let us not allow a foreigner to come and fund African language to be taught in school, because they are not happy with that. Two.
Yes, as you conclude.
As I conclude, this is the high time, as the doctor said, that we have policies. We need to regulate this. Media and every person should come on board and do the awareness, do the sensitization. And let us identify people, let us educate these people who will come on board and take us through studying African languages, because we have few of them. If you say let us today all Uganda study African languages, I'm telling you, we may not fail to get the exact number of what.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, Milton, in a minute or two, what message do you have for the viewers, for our audience, in as far as embracing our African languages and also our education system really working towards promotion of African languages?
Basically, mine is very simple, is to thank the 200 schools that we are building capacity with Global Peace. We thank you, our teachers, but we also thank the departments of Ministry of Education and the Sports, Ministry of Public Service, that are embracing some of these initiatives, proposals, and we are happy that the Ministry of Education and all our agencies, all of us, we are now calling upon Ugandans to write proposals to the Ministry of Education. The Education Commission has been set up for the transformation of education outcomes. Please send in your proposals so that these conversations can shape the education of the future, which will be able to build the productive population that will build a new nation called Uganda and Africa, integration can be achieved, so that we talk about Africa to become the next big thing. You know, we must have the biggest economy. We must have peace and security. But then we will not achieve that if we don't remind the Africans that you have the potential to become the best. Because God loves you just like he loves other people of the world. And we are lagging behind with our gold, with our oil. Why? Because we have not embraced our languages, we have not embraced our creativity, our innovations, our talents. We are just being pushed by foreign systems. But our values, look at the values and the rich cultures that we have. Indeed, the extended family values, for example, where you can be able to pay school fees and take care of the relatives of your wife's side. Those are the cultures that you don't find anywhere. The family institution, the parents listening to us, talk to your children in your local language, so that your children can be able to impress Pan-Africanism, but shaping the future of Africa through one family under God.
Well, Emma, thank you very much, Milton Kambula. Yes, Dr. Lang Famfa Damfa, yes, your parting shot, your message to the Africans who are watching the show, what is in stock, what is ACLAN planning to do in as far as aiding the various institutions, including media houses like UBC, including centers for curriculum development, and including cultural centers in the promotion of African languages?
Thank you again for that question. I think it's very, very important to work together. Because it is an African thing. We used to tell people that these African languages development or empowerment issue, nobody is coming to do it for us. It is we Africans that we do it for ourselves. Now, all the institutions, universities, media houses, in the private sector, the civil society, and other institutions, we need to come together. Now, if you look at ACLAN's Vehicular Cross-Border Language Commission, for example, for Kiswahili, we try to bring in civil society, there is gender consideration, institutions, and we all work together to empower this language. But what I wanted to say to the African people is that member states of the African Union should implement the language plan of action for Africa, which states that each member state of the African Union should develop a language policy and use African languages in the education system, in the media, etc. And our policymakers should not consider our languages to be in the periphery of our development activities. And this is a major problem. A major problem is that we, the African people, as the last speaker has just said, we think that our own things are not important. We think that our own African languages are relegate, are not relevant. We think that our values are not important. But what we can do in any language, we can do it in our languages. I was giving an example of people. The Chinese language and the other languages at the UN. They speak, they do economics and all these things in their languages, and then that is it. So let's together, and then we have projects. We have the Linguistic Atlas for Africa, which determines precisely the number of African languages. We have the African languages and the cyberspace to try to empower these languages in the cyberspace and put our languages into the computers. We have the Pan-African Masters and PhD program to train Africans to become specialists. We have the Pan-African Center for Interpretation and Translation, which is, geared towards translating, training people, training experts, professionals in the profession of translation into Kiswahili, and from Kiswahili to other African languages, and then to English. Kiswahili would be the center of the
Doctor, I can
program.
Doctor, I can see time is not.
It is attached to everything. So we'll have time to talk about all those things. But what is important, I wanted to say, let member states develop language policies and implement them. Akalan is coming to work with member states to guide them in developing these language policies, which is one of our main mandates. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Lang Fafa Damfa, the Executive Secretary of ACLAN, the body of African Union that is charged with the promotion and development of African language. It has been a pleasure having you on this show to talk about the African languages and what the African Union is actually planning in as far as having our languages taught and developed by our education system. I must also thank you, Kambula Milton from the Global Peace Foundation as a peace ambassador for really also being on the show and telling us how exactly African languages can be used as an instrument of peace. And I also must thank Walunga Yusuf, the President, Uganda National Students Association. Definitely, you need to work with the Ministry of Education. You need to work with actually the President, who's your patron of UNSA, in ensuring that African languages are developed good enough. He's also an ardent supporter of African languages. Amanda Kola Mazima, wishing you a blessed evening, and thank you for keeping it on UBC TV, especially this education forum.
Hallelujah.
Tarehe 6